Other than checking in with her parents by phone, she was free to come and go as she pleased and never worried about her safety. However, her blissful ignorance ended when a man began stalking her. Now it's time for Puppets, Pupils, and Producers, a story of mind over matter. After one of her mother's sisters died suddenly from a heart attack, the two remaining partners met to discuss the future of the restaurant. Cassie's parents were dedicated to growing the business, while the eldest sister found the long hours physically demanding and wanted out. Filled to capacity for all 3 meals, her parents decided it was time to expand and found a restaurant with an attached banquet hall for rent. Walk-in customers occupied the tables in the front of the building, and private parties, service club luncheons, and weddings occurred in the back. On Saturdays, Cassie helped with the weddings and parties by setting the tables, cleaning vegetables, and washing dishes. Stan helped too, but he'd have several meltdowns and would usually be more trouble than his worth. If they were lucky, a parent took them home before the dance started. If not, they'd collect glasses, empty ashtrays, and dance in the kitchen until their feet ached. On Sundays, the restaurant remained closed so everyone could recuperate from Saturday's event. Usually, the day involved watching rented movies, drinking soda, and eating a lot of junk food. Occurring for many years to come, it would be her family's version of spending quality time together. Although she created most of the recipes, her mother didn't particularly like to cook, and because she was so messy when she did it, her team of middle-aged women preferred she didn't. What she actually enjoyed was event planning with the clients. First, they'd bond over the personalized details, and in the weeks or months leading up to their celebration, she'd spend hours on the phone reassuring everything would be perfect. Then her hard-working team would pull it off, and she'd take most of the credit. Motivated by pleasure rather than her pain, her mother still drank too much, but only on Saturdays when she'd sit behind the bar and enjoy the party she planned. As per usual, her father drank every day and thought his glass of water was fooling his family, but everyone knew it was spiked with vodka. He also believed his drinking wasn't a problem as long as he didn't miss a day of work. So, like a long-distance runner, he paced his sipping while he tended bar and would finally finish his almost daily bottle when he got home. Whether it was due to people always being around or whether they were simply too tired, her parents didn't argue as much, and the incidents of physical abuse occurred less often. No longer having to referee her parents' melees, Cassie slept much better. Her grades improved, and like her brother Robert, she started to excel at individual and team sports. She held records in track and field and had a killer serve, but she was best known for her skills in gymnastics. Along with winning several gold and silver medals, she was selected to teach gymnastics to kids from other schools. Cassie wanted to celebrate her awards, but they were tainted by guilt because she knew her ribbon, medal, or trophy would go in the display case at the restaurant, where her mother would receive praise for rearing 2 overachieving children and expect sympathy for raising Stan, who she referred to as her special needs child. Every time she heard her mother boast, she wanted to interrupt and say she was a fraud because she didn't go to any of her kids' practices or events and barely knew what they were doing from one day to the next. But she didn't and bit her tongue instead. With both of her brothers in high school and her parents at the restaurant, Cassie had the house to herself for an hour in the morning and an hour after school. If she wasn't practicing, competing, or teaching, she'd be at home cooking, cleaning, and doing the laundry. Other than checking in with her parents by phone, she was free to come and go as she pleased and never worried about her safety. However, her blissful ignorance ended when a man began stalking her. Believing he was a friend of her parents, she politely answered his mundane questions about her likes and dislikes and didn't question his motivation until he explained what he wanted to do to her prepubescent body. Shocked by his perversion, she ended the call, but as soon as she did, the phone started to ring again. She kept lifting the receiver and hanging it up, and he kept calling. Afraid, she dialed the restaurant and spoke to her father, who said it was just a prank call and told her to take the phone off the hook. The next day, she found a can of Dr. Pepper in the basket of her bike and panicked when she remembered telling the man it was her favorite soda. Leaving the can on the ground, she rode home as fast as she could and checked her mirrors frequently. Feeling better as soon as she got home to her 2 protective dogs, she walked in the front door and the phone started ringing. Unsure whether it was him, she waited for the caller to speak first, but her idea backfired when having the captive audience of his fantasies excited him more. Between his panting, he asked if she enjoyed the soda he'd left for her, and she dropped the receiver. Her whole body began to shake, and tears followed. Once again, she called the restaurant, but her father thought she was being silly, and instead of rushing home to protect her, he suggested a boy from school had a crush on her. On the 3rd day, she arrived home to a cold can of Dr. Pepper at the front door of the house, and as soon as she got inside, the phone started ringing. She called the restaurant again, and after her very busy mother answered, she chastised Cassie and told her he'd stop calling if she'd stop answering. Adding there was nothing she could do from there, she instructed her daughter to lock the doors, to take the phone off the hook, and to sit tight until her brothers got home. Then she reminded her that the dinner crowd would be arriving and she shouldn't call again unless it was an actual emergency. As with the first 2 days, the phone stopped ringing as soon as one of her brothers came home, which convinced everyone that she was overreacting to a prankster or an admirer. But Cassie knew it was an adult with bad intentions, so she took matters into her own hands and put a can of wasp spray in her knapsack and set another beside the front door. Before she left for school, she made sure all the doors and windows were locked and checked them again as soon as she got home. The calls continued for a month or so, and during that time, she started sleepwalking again. Although she'd never know how often she did it, she was aware she was doing it because on 2 occasions she'd woken up while she was checking that the front door was locked. Then, unaware her mother was at home sick, he called and Cassie passed the phone to her. Expecting him to hang up once she identified herself, her mother listened to his devious desires and realized it wasn't a kid. She told him what she thought about men like him and said she'd be calling the police, but it did not deter him from describing what he wanted to do to her daughter in graphic detail. When the police officer interviewed them, Cassie and her mother said they didn't recognize the man's voice and couldn't provide the name of a likely suspect. Both were sure it was a stranger they'd never met before, but they were wrong. Her mother met him at the restaurant shortly before the calls started, but she didn't suspect him because, just like Cassie, she didn't think twice about answering the nice man's mundane questions about the medals in the display case, since he said he had a daughter around the same age as Cassie who did gymnastics as well. Nor did she suspect that her complaining about the long hours involved in owning a restaurant not only gave him vital information about Cassie being at home alone every day, but also confirmed that she wasn't the supportive mother she claimed to be. For if she was, she'd know that unlike her, he went to the practices and meets where she won some of those medals because he was dating Cassie's coach. The calls stopped as soon as the police tapped the phones. The delivery of cans of Dr. Pepper ended as well. In time, everyone forgot about the man and what he said he was going to do to her. Everyone, that is, except for Cassie and the man who had hundreds of pictures of her bouncing and bending in her skimpy leotard.